This episode is sponsored by the Body Image Upgrade, a 30-day course helping you rebuild your relationship with your body. Tools, resources, and daily exercises to upgrade your body image. Learn more at bodyimageupgrade.com and enter the code podcast for 50% off. Welcome to Breaking Body Biases, a podcast about creating health and happiness without worrying about your weight. I'm Christine DeFilippis, certified fitness professional, studio owner, and creator of FitProEd, an online education platform for group fitness instructors. Join me every week as I interview fellow fitness pros, dietitians, wellness practitioners, and a wealth of others who are sharing their journey and helping to destroy diet culture. Welcome to episode 10. Yes, 10 episodes, double digits of the Breaking Body Biases podcast. It's Christine here, and I have a great episode. Well, all of our episodes are great. I would hope that I'm giving you some great content, and that's why you keep tuning in. But today is another great person I'm interviewing, JodiAnn Stevenson. She's a body liberation oriented and health at every size aligned, weight neutral certified health coach, personal trainer, and yoga instructor. And her studio, Bad Dog Rebel Fitness, we're going to learn how she came up with that name. She's also a podcaster. And I encourage you, when you're done this episode, to check out her podcast, Real Rebel Health Podcast. And we're going to talk a little bit about a few of her episodes that we're going to kind of get into the harm of diet culture and how we can undo it as individuals and then on a bigger level. And this is work that she's doing with her doctoral work that she is pursuing right now. She's going to share with us some of the things she's interested in learning. She's in the early stages of her doctoral work. And she also she's the founding member and runs the BBB Collective, which is a community of body liberation-oriented movement professionals. And I hope you really enjoy this episode. This is a must listen if you are a fitness professional. There's a lot that JodiAnn shares, again, a lot of what she's doing in her doctoral work, that we really want to be careful in the work that we're doing. We affect so many people as fitness professionals. And if you are someone that is a fitness enthusiast, or maybe you're looking to get into fitness, some things to look for when looking for fitness people to follow, to take advice from, to work with. So she gives some really great advice in those areas, and I can't wait for you to listen. So let's tune in now. So I'm excited to have you on, JodiAnn, today on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Christine.
Sure. And your story is very unique. So why don't we start with that journey that took you from where you were to where you are today?
Sure. I think that it's possible that my story is not as unique as it might seem after diving into a lot of body liberation stories and how people have ended up in this direction. I'm realizing that there's a lot of similarities. And so the way that I start telling my story, it just doesn't feel right to start it without explaining that body dissatisfaction for me started at a really young age with the sexual abuse that I suffered as a child. I think that that was sort of the original wound that made me think that there was something inherently wrong with not just my body, but my whole being, you know? And so, like I said, I honestly don't think that that's very unique. I think, unfortunately, it's really pretty common. And when you grow up with that kind of original wound, you just, you go through life trying to figure out how to make yourself acceptable. And diet culture just loves stepping right in there and filling that void for a lot of us and giving us a really good guide to learning how to earn people's love and earn people's respect. So sort of fast forward through that. And in addition to that, my mother was always in a larger body. She was somebody who was really, really thin her whole life. And then through her adulthood, when I knew her. She had me when she was 35. At that point, she had 6 children, 5 of whom she had 1 year right after the other. So that did a lot to her body. And in the meantime, you have all these, she's just getting the advice to diet, lose weight, lose weight, lose weight. So she weight cycled a lot through her life. And that was my model growing up, that's sort of what you just did as a woman, especially if you felt like you needed to earn people's respect or love or your value in the world. So dieting was modeled to me at a very, very early age. And I think probably when I look back on it, the beginnings of my eating disorder probably showed up as young as 10 or 12, where I started on a big restricting and binging cycle. And that was never caught. You know, it was when I look back and I think about all the doctors I saw and all the things that I was going through that were little signs and little symptoms of that behavior. And I think how many doctors had no idea that that's what it was, because my body was always bigger for the most part. So they couldn't see that connection. So anyway, I was never into sports. I was never an super active kid. In fact, I only joined swim team and gymnastics and stuff like that in high school so I could avoid going home after school. I liked being involved. I know it sounds really sad, but I had a lot of fun and I really loved swimming. But it was definitely a way to not have to go home and see people at my house, particularly my father. So I did do a little bit of sports type stuff, but I was never good at it, and it was never my thing exactly. But when I was in college, I discovered step aerobics and the world of step aerobics, right? Like, and now I'm totally dating myself. So the world of step aerobics.
I'm with you there. I'm with you.
The world of step aerobics in the early 90s was, I mean, and I'm sure there are instructors that are still like this today, but I had instructors that would literally say things like, you know, you're going to have to work off everything you ate for lunch. And, you know, like, we'd have a class after Thanksgiving and I had an instructor once that like gave us the exact amount of calories in pie and how much we were going to have to work that day in class to
yes.
You know, anyway.
I apologize. You know, I apologize. I was one of those instructors that hosted a turkey blaster, a turkey burner. Yeah, no, I apologize. I was in that.
I was into it 100%. I was into it 100%. And I felt like I had been given some kind of golden key, like, oh, this is the thing that I've been waiting for, you know, my whole life, to make my body acceptable, to make my body lovable. And I got through doing step aerobics and all the restrictions that was encouraged by fitness professionals at that time. I probably entered into my first period of really the lower weight that is accompanied with my eating disorder. And all the praise came with it, all the love and all the validation. And then what's beautiful, but what's beautiful to me now that I recognize is that underneath that layer of validation, there's this layer of just utter fear of that weight coming back, and that validation being taken away, and that love being taken away, and that rejection coming back to me. So anyway, I went through cycles of that. I just continued through cycles of that, but I also continued to love group fitness, and I continued to just get more and more into it. And I think I was lucky because I always felt a different connection to the movement than just the restriction life that I led in order to control the size of my body. So I also always felt the mental health bonuses of moving my body. And I think that was very lucky for me, because I never gave up on moving my body because I had that. And I was always able to divorce the two from one another. Not always. There were moments where I had to purposely extract them from one another.
Right.
But I was able to, because I found that joy in movement for a long time. So sort of fast forward, I actually am a English professor, or was an English professor for 20 years. And during that time, I just became really disillusioned with teaching at the particular community college that I was at. I'm a huge proponent of the community college dream and goals, but my particular community college was having a lot of problems, and I think that I went to take the health fitness degree there as a way to escape my dissatisfaction with my work. And it was a great and fun distraction. And in the meantime, I also became a triathlete. I was a recreational triathlete, but I did shorter, not Ironman, but I was engaged in. Why the word for the sprint try was not coming to me. I would do sprint level tries, right? But I did that over several years, and I got really involved with the triathlon community there. And that was sort of the moment that really took hold of my disorder and just drew me down, and really made the whole thing about what my body looked like and what size my body was. And so I just I went into this restriction spiral that was really finally very frightening for me. And in the meantime, I've become a personal trainer. I've become a group fitness instructor. I'm measuring and weighing people and telling them what they need to do and how much weight they need to lose. And then I'm diagnosed with an eating disorder, and I need to start healing from that. Through my healing, I found a health at every size therapist who introduced me to intuitive eating. And then I heard the words joyful movement, and I discovered the whole entire health at every size movement. And that whole journey is sort of its own fascinating story. But yeah, so now I find myself trying to do that work and trying to essentially just overthrow the mainstream fitness industry and even the whole mainstream health industrial complex.
Yeah, and I think that
kind of brings us to the present.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of people would be, maybe they won't be surprised. I feel like if they're listening to this podcast, they're not going to be surprised, because almost everyone I interview, whether they're a fitness professional or a dietitian or they're doing work in this space, it all came from struggling with diet culture, struggling with body image, and you're lucky that you were able to kind of find that you had a little twinge of that joyful movement early. Group fitness has its good side and bad side, and it all goes back to the instructor. And if the instructor's struggling, like we both were teaching and not in healthy places ourselves, and then like you said with your mom, you pass on this pass on from mom to child. We pass it on as group fitness leaders to our clients, and it just keeps that cycle going. So it's good that you could disconnect that food and exercise, because if we could disconnect those two things, like exercise is not in exchange for our food,
right?
Vice versa. Like that's one step. But let's get into the diet culture stuff. Let's get into how diet culture harms us.
Yes. Yeah. I talk about this a little bit in the first season of my Real Rebel Health podcast. I think you just reminded me on episode 6.
Yes.
I talk a little bit about this. So I'm not sure I'm going to cover all those same bases, but I mean, what I just talked about, the most egregious, I think, maybe not even the most egregious, but maybe some just the most obvious, is that it does directly cause eating disorders to develop. It directly encourages eating disorders to develop. And maybe more egregious, but more hidden, is the fact that it causes disordered eating. So not eating disorders, but
Right.
disordered eating. And disordered eating is so common that we just think it's normal.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. And I think, so it also tells this big lie that we are in control of the size of our bodies, which means that there are so many people living with thin privilege who just kind of won the lottery and were born into a system where their body was considered the goal or the superior way of being. And those people are walking around every day. And those of us who have restricted down to that good goal weight or that acceptable weight, those of us who have restricted down to that have experienced this as well. We are given a sense of superiority. We are told we are the ones who won, and we're the ones who are right in the world. And I think it's really sick when you think about it, how many people are walking around within diet culture, not realizing, of course, they're walking around in diet culture with this really superior feeling of, well, if I can do it, if my body looks like this, and then it gives them this ability to look at other people and make these judgments about other people's bodies. And in a moment, just looking at someone, they've decided what they eat. They've decided how much they eat. They've decided how much they move their bodies. So I think one of the biggest damages that diet culture does is that it separates people and creates a hierarchical system of body size. And that hierarchical system destroys relationship among people and leads to massive discrimination and massive dysfunction. It leads to self-hatred among people whose bodies don't comply with those standards. And interestingly, I've come to this newer realization, even since the episode 6 of my podcast, where, the people who think they're winning, the people who are living within privilege, they're living with a constant underlying fear of their own bodies being policed as well, and the fact of their bodies being policed as well. So they're winning. They've got all the things going for them in terms of complying with their body automatically complies with what diet culture wants from people. And yet, because they see all these other bodies being policed, they see all these other bodies being seen as unacceptable, they know they live on this edge of, but if I gain the weight and if my body changes, and they live on that constant, neurotic edge of, I have to maintain this or I'm not acceptable. And it's interesting because I was just telling somebody the other day that I chose my name Bad Dog Rebel, and it just sounds like a cute, gym name, Bad Dog Rebel. But really, it's sort of a deeper kind of concept. It's the idea that I felt as a person who had restricted the size of my body down to what was complicit with diet culture, what was acceptable within diet culture. I felt that now that I look back at it, that I was a good dog, that I was sitting still. I was told what my place was, and I accepted my place, and I got the pat on the head every time somebody said, "You look great," or I don't even know if I want to go into some of the inappropriate things that people said to me to validate my eating disorder. But you get the pat on the head and you're the good dog in that situation. And the very name of my fitness and yoga studio is actually, no, I want to be a bad dog. I don't need to be anybody's good dog anymore. I need to be, and maybe, the problem is I don't want to be a dog at all. I don't want to be seen as that at all. But for the time being, I'm comfortable just saying, no, I'm not going to live by those rules anymore. So I don't know. I'm going back to my story instead of what the damage that diet culture does. But
no, your story is so relevant, though. I mean, we all go back to, because it's how we view the world, our lens, our everything we experience. So we can only draw on our own experiences. So your experiences are so helpful in this.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I think what I was just trying to get at is just that we often think that diet culture is most damaging to people whose bodies don't comply with the norms, the acceptable norms, but it's really damaging to every single person who lives within it, even people who think they're winning the game.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's very, very true. And I loved what you said about living on that edge. So if you are in the body accepted by society, I can talk from my experience. I lived on that edge. It's scary. And then you do very
Mm-hmm.
unhealthy things to stay there. Listen,
Yes.
I didn't have a love life at that time. I had no partner. I really, during the darkest times, had no friends because I was obsessed.
Yes.
And I was so
Yes.
afraid. I never even thought about that, about being on that edge of, I think in my head, I thought I'm going to be looked that I'm a failure. And the funny thing is, I had failed a few times because we do that weight cycling. But I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
this has got to be the one that works. I put everything into this one, this time around. If I fail, I put on weight, like you said, I connected it to my worthiness. People are going to think that I've been told you don't have willpower, you don't have, you don't have what
Mm-hmm.
it takes to, you know, again, all that connection. That's powerful stuff there. So how do we
And
undo it?
you still see, well, okay, that's a really great question. And I'm actually going there right now. Anyway,
Okay.
I was already headed in that direction because you still see like those things that you just said about, you just don't have enough willpower. You're just not trying hard. I still see this in the fitness world, in the mainstream fitness industry. I see trainers and fitness instructors saying this all the time to people that they're just not they're just not committed enough. They're just not
Uh,
trying hard enough, if they would just have not let themselves go, or and it's just so damaging. It's just
yeah.
so damaging. And I think that my answer to how do we get rid of it, I think there's like layers. There's the sort of micro layer of every individual person who's living within diet culture waking up to it. And it's just like waking up to any abusive system, abusive paradigm. We have to wake up to white supremacy. If we're not awake to it yet, we have to do that in this country, in this culture, in this world. We have to wake up to white supremacy. We have to wake up to the way LGBTQ folks are treated in this country. If that's not your experience, you have to wake up to that. And even if you're living inside of it, you just have never thought of it. Even if it is your experience, often we're not awake to it. So individually, we have to awaken to it, and individually people have to awaken to the ways in which diet culture is harming them. They have to start to question why they think they're winning that game. And I think that's honestly a lot of the onus should be on the people who are, quote unquote, winning that game, who are faring well in diet culture. Like, ask yourself why you think that is. And those edges, like, discover those edges that you're living on and figure out how it might be harming you. But also think about who you have harmed, through living this like superior life of having the body that complies with the standards. So, and individual work is absolutely essential. But what I'm really hoping to be a part of at some level is a larger, just enormous shift within the health industry, within the mainstream health industrial complex. I've called it a million different things, and people call it different things in the body liberation community. But the damage that there are a lot of great medical doctors, a lot of great DOs out there, a lot of health professionals who are doing a lot of great things. But diet culture is just pervasive in the medical field and within, the advice that doctors give their patients. And people, I think about my mother, and my mother she thought of doctors as little gods, just whatever they told her had to be true. And if they said lose weight, and that was the advice she was sent away with, okay, she's going to lose weight, and then she's going to go where? She's going to go to diet culture that's just going to give her crash diet after crash diet after crash diet, give her restriction, give her things that ultimately, like, they're never going to work. They're never going to, that's not health. That's not long-term, that's not a long-term healthy goal. Anyway, so too many doctors are still just saying, lose weight. You have to lose weight. You have to lose weight. That doesn't mean to say that it's all doctors' fault. It certainly is not. They're a product of their culture. But I think we need to get more and more and more health professionals to understand the damage they're doing when they live within diet culture unchecked and they're not thinking it through and looking at all the data. And fitness professionals, absolutely. Yoga professionals, absolutely. I mean, all of these people do damage when they concentrate on the size of people's bodies. So yeah, I think there's the individual level, and then there's that bigger work that has to be done. And, I'm not even gonna guess as to how long that work is gonna take, but it's a big cultural shift. I mean, it's probably not in my lifetime, is that shift gonna happen, but it's gotta happen. It's gotta happen.
Yeah. I think there has to be a lot of shifts, like you mentioned, in the health field, and then in fitness industry, it is, like you said, pervasive. It's bad. As a fitness professional, when I attend fitness conferences, because I'm more aware, like you said, when you awaken and you're aware of this, you see it and you're like, oh
It's
my God, it's
everywhere.
everywhere.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So it's hard to undo. You and I, like, our mindsets, it's a lot of work. You're doing a lot of work in this field, but then in this, with just people, like, as a fitness professional, it's a responsibility that we have to, we're affecting so many people. So you're doing doctoral work in this area. Talk to me, share with us, like, what you're exploring. I mean, this is why you know a lot about this. But what is some of the things you're exploring in this area?
Yeah, I'm really at the beginning. I'm still within my first year of coursework of my doctoral studies. So I want to preface everything I'm about to say with that because I have literally just started putting my toe into the world of fat studies. And I don't think that my dissertation and my work is actually going to end up in the realm of fat studies, which is, I don't think it necessarily is going to stay there. So I don't know if just in case listeners aren't familiar with fat studies, it's an academic discipline area, right? So just like it's another form of, you have queer studies, you have, when I was in school, we had African-American studies. I think hopefully that has all evolved in new ways. So you have different identities, sort of having their own disciplines, their own study around what the inequalities and the justice issues are for those different bodies. And so fat studies is a relatively new area of study, and it's fascinating to me, and it's definitely part of this whole thing, but it's not the whole thing, because I'm really interested in the health studies aspect too, and where the disconnect is between these. And ultimately, and I think this is really selfish, I guess. So where I'm looking for, like, this, I'm really interested in, as a health and fitness professional, how can I help? How can I make a difference? And how can I help my colleagues in this field understand what the hell is going on, right? So they have the data. If they want to look at the data, it's there. Diets don't work. Most fitness professionals will tell you diets don't work right before they put you on a diet.
Yeah.
So they know that 95% of the time when you put somebody on a restrictive diet, 95% of the time people gain that weight back. They know that weight cycling is as bad for your heart as smoking, and yet they encourage people to continue to do it. So we are not health oriented, we're body size oriented in this industry. And just like what I said about, the medical field is body size oriented, the fitness field is body size oriented. I would argue that the American westernized white yoga world is body size oriented. What we need is people to understand, I feel, because they have the data and they don't want to believe it. So I feel I have a unique position where I can help people feel what it feels like to live within a culture that makes you earn your value and your worth by controlling the size of your body. I'm just going to come back to this metaphor of the dog, that just keeps getting kicked, keeps getting thrown out into the yard and kicked and abused over and over by a medical industry and a fitness industry that just says, lose weight, lose weight, lose weight. You got to lose weight, lose weight. What does that feel like for the individual? So my doctoral work, I hope to explore how capitalism is sort of at the core of why we can't get over this, why we can't get beyond it. Because we have fitness professionals who have to make a living. Yeah. And the way that fitness professionals, for the most part, make a living is to sell validation and to sell, I can make you a lovable person. Finally, here's the thing, here's the golden key. I will make you a valuable person with my restrictive dieting suggestions. And that sells, it just sells. And I think that's the reality of what we live in today. But if we go back in history, like if you look at Sabrina String's work, what was her book? What was her book called? Fear of the Black Body. Mm-hmm. I'm just interested in that from the perspective of I'm interested in it in all respects, but specifically the way she goes back into the history of how medical professionals' response to body size was sort of born out of this desire to sell product. It wasn't based in health. It wasn't based in how to help people live a longer, healthier life or a better life. It was based on how to sell product. And so I think if we look at capitalism, and capitalism is an extension of colonization, I think if we go back and we see how the very concept of health was colonized, was created into this capitalized product, we might find some interesting things there. At the same time, I am uniquely positioned as somebody who has 2 master's degrees in poetry to engage in what's called poetic inquiry. And poetic inquiry, the way at least that I'm envisioning it for my project, would be something along the lines of collecting interviews, collecting stories of people, and then distilling those into language, into a poetic language that would help people, and specifically fitness professionals and health professionals, feel what people are feeling on a gut level, feel what diet culture does to people on the level of how it destroys my life and the effect it had on my emotional well-being and my mental health and even my physical health, right? Over long periods of time. So yeah, it's really convoluted and complex because I'm right at the beginning, and anybody who's like done a PhD or is working on a PhD is probably laughing at me right now going, this girl doesn't know what she's doing yet.
No, not at all.
I do have a fair direction for the level, for the amount of time I've been in the program. And ultimately just the goal is going to be to try to get people to understand why diet culture is harmful, like really feel it. Yeah. And feel why something has to be done about it, because the data is all there and it's being ignored. It's being just trampled over.
It's just so fascinating. And I find that no matter where you are, like learning, we can all continue to learn. So the fact that you're at on a different stage of your learning. I mean, you're pursuing the doctoral work. So like, even though you think that somebody that like, oh, I don't know enough of this yet, you know so much, and it's just so fascinating. And even that connection with the billion-dollar industry and the selling, it is so true, because I know for myself as a studio owner, oh, I could sell a lot more memberships if I do before and after pictures and sell that body goal. No, not going to
Yes.
do that, because it does do so much harm. So I
Yeah.
cannot wait to learn more from you about all the capital,
Oh, thank
all that
you.
connection. It's just, it's so important and very important work. And I think, I just think it's going to happen, and it better happen in our lifetime. We're going to shift the industry, and you're already
I think
doing some shifts.
we'll see progression. We'll see progression for sure. Yeah.
But you're doing work with the Rebel Body Collective. Share with our listeners what you do. We want to be, our studio, Pop Fit Studio, we want to be involved with that, because I think collaborations and connections are what raises all of our voices. So share more about your collective.
Yeah. So this is like still a bit of a tiny dream of mine. And I've been partnering with a couple of different instructors, Jess Brock-Pitt out of Enlighten Wellness, and Daniela Lucetta out of Danny Outfit. They both have studios similar to mine, similar size, similar offerings. So we kind of got together, and they're both from a very body liberation oriented perspective. And it was important to me to find people who are from a body liberation oriented perspective, as opposed to the more popular sort of term of body positive fitness, because I feel like body positive fitness has been co-opted in a lot of ways. And you can't always, I'm just going to say, you can't always trust that body positive fitness isn't going to be all up in diet culture and coming from that perspective. So I looked for body liberation oriented professionals to sort of start partnering with, and I had a dream to grow really, really fast. But we've been taking our time kind of talking about it and thinking about what the next right move is. But my dream for this collective is mainly to bring together body liberation oriented fitness professionals and movement professionals, just so that we can think about what the possibilities even are for what we can offer people. I think there needs to be, and I'm not alone in this. Many people think this. Many businesses that are starting off think this right now. There needs to be more inclusivity in all ways in the fitness and yoga just world and offerings. But even reaching out to people for whom fitness and yoga is not even on the table as a possibility for them, because it's seen as this thing that only is available to rich white women, if I'm being honest. So how do we figure that whole thing out, and can we, as a collective, can we do anything about that? But also just like, how do we support each other in this battle against this diet culture, this huge behemoth of a landscape that really, on a really individual and personal level, will knock an instructor down over and over and over. I know I'm not alone as an instructor when you just mentioned, if I just used before and after pictures, if I just, offered weight loss. I know I'm not alone as a body liberation oriented instructor when I get so downhearted seeing program after program after program being offered, and all the comments and all the women that are just going crazy for this new program. And I'm, as a body liberation oriented professional, I just want to say, what are you doing? Look at what we have over here. Come here. We want to hold you up and give you something that you can actually use for the rest of your life in a really positive and beautiful way. And those people are just going to give you more diet culture bullshit.
Yep.
So as a collective, and I didn't ask you if I could swear on this podcast, and I hope I
yes,
didn't already many times. I probably did.
It's fine.
But
just know we don't like the numbers. The cursing is fine.
Right. No numbers.
Well, it's amazing. It's amazing work, because I 100% am on board with it. I kind of relate it to, I'm not a religious person at all, but the story of David and Goliath. And I really feel like we can build up our army, and listeners, you're part of that army, and we can really grow. And I think it's going to be really powerful, the work that you're doing. JodiAnn has a podcast, the Real Rebel Health podcast. It's definitely something you can go and learn and listen, because some of the topics we talked about today, JodiAnn, you go into much deeper content.
Yes.
Like, we would be here all day. So definitely go and listen to that. Is there anything else that you want to share?
I try to go into all that detail in really bite-sized pieces, so it's
Right.
not too much at any one time for people. Anything else I want to share? I think that I just want to say one of the things that I get on about on social media is that more people need to be supporting body liberation oriented fitness programs. And I don't want to put the onus on, on people, on just like our potential clients. But look, if you're interested in shifting the paradigm, if you're interested in a world that does not value people by the size of their bodies, and if you're interested in helping shift all of that harm that diet culture is doing, a really basic thing that people can do, that your listeners can do, that anybody looking for fitness and yoga can do, is refuse to give a cent, a moment more to diet culture oriented fitness professionals. Just stop listening to them and tune them out and stop giving them money, and look for body liberation oriented professionals, because we are out here. And since COVID came on, so many of us are online and available at all hours, and doing all kinds of great work. And that's what the Rebel Body Collective, I want the Rebel Body Collective to be about, is highlighting the great work that so many body liberation oriented movement professionals are doing. But please seek us out and support us. And I don't mean me and the two people I work with, but like all of us. There are so many of us, and you can find us. So
yeah. Well, thank you so much. This has been amazing. I feel like we could just be here all day, and the work that you're doing is just so amazing. And I feel like there's going to be so much progress. And I'm going to put all of JodiAnn's information below, website and social media, and you can learn more, again, her podcast. And I just thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
So that was my conversation with JodiAnn Stevenson. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you want to connect with her or want more of her resources, including her podcast, check out the information in the show notes. And we now have on our website, each of our amazing guests has their own blog page. So you can learn more about the guests. The transcripts are there, as well as additional resources. So go to breakingbodybiases.com and check out our new blog. We also have a resource page that we've been adding a lot of the books that are mentioned in the podcast, additional resources, films to watch, podcasts to listen to, influencers to follow. And again, all of our episodes are on the Breaking Body Biases website. If you know someone that might be a good guest, maybe it's you. Be sure to apply on our website as well. And if you enjoyed our episode, which I hope you did, I hope you really enjoy the episodes that we put out each and every week, that if you enjoy it, please make sure to rate, review, and follow the podcast. We can't wait to keep delivering you more episodes each and every week. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.